Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Now, first of all, I would like to sincerely apologize for my complete lack of memory. But after this, I'd like to get to outlining our case. Now, what we've seen from side proposition is a side that sees life as finite. But what we see is that the universe in which we live is one in which infinite opportunities exist. And we think that it is only the natural progression of human thought and human ingenuity and essentially human nature to strive to become immortal, to strive to become one with the universe, to strive to be able to access these infinite opportunities. So, in terms of our constructive points, first of all, I'm going to be talking to you about how one has an obligation to society. How this is a way to live your life, and how, when you become immortal, you have many more increased means by which to actually help society. I'm going to talk about the fact that we have infinite opportunities. And my partner is going to touch upon the aspect that if you're immortal, then you inevitably are going to have superhuman powers, and having a superhero is going to be very cool. A real-life superhero, especially given all of what he'd be able to do. So, first of all, what needs to be established for our case is that you are going to have increased means if you're going to be an immortal person. So in terms of sponsorships, for example, you can just picture advertisements on the television. The immortal man recommends the bacon cheeseburger. But, I mean, more seriously, I mean, this is going to get you tons of money with which to do good things in the world, but you can also support good causes. This newfound fame, you can say, yes, you should be donating to World Vision. You should be acknowledging the fact that within certain countries there are those who are not as fortunate as us, and we should strive to give to these people. You can use your increased clout and your increased means to be able to actually effectuate positive change in the world. You're also clearly going to get more media attention, which really does just come into the main point, which is that humans, to a certain degree, are born. What gives meaning to our life is the helping of others. I think Albert Einstein said, life is not worth meaning unless it's worth living for someone else. And what we see is that a good way of actually helping other people is by becoming immortal and being able to help them with these increased means which are available to you.
Don't you think that this extreme amount of fame will corrupt this kind of individual, and that he's actually not going to be supporting good causes?
Well, no, because the resolution specifies me, and I'm not going to be corrupted. Yes, in terms of obligation to society. Now, we see that not only would this person have increased means with which to do things, but we also see that that he would be given more time to be able to actually effectuate the change which this individual would think to be positive. So in terms of, for example, scientific advancements, what we find is that in the current situation, when people only have a certain amount of time to be able to formulate scientific hypotheses in order to be useful for society, what happens is that we lose a lot of the thought that was prevalent, that was present in these people. When Archimedes died and he was drawing geometrical shapes on the sand, and the army of the invading country shot him anyway, despite the fact that they weren't supposed to, we lost a lot of knowledge there. If we are able to become immortal, then this is not going to happen. All the knowledge that one might have lost, all the unique perspectives that one would have been able to gain if one is immortal are never going to be lost. They're never going to be wasted as they are in the status quo. So in terms of infinite opportunities, now when I was 5 or so, my father asked me the question, now if the universe ended with a brick wall, what would be on the other side? And what we see is that this is really representative of what life is all about. There are infinite possibilities. The universe is infinite. Number sets are infinite, and the possibilities associated with these are therefore infinite as well. We see that if we've gone to every place on Earth, well then we can go to Mars. If we've been to every place on Mars, well then we can go to another planet. We can expand our horizons to an extent which is infinite because we are immortal. Clearly in terms of both ourselves, it is very desirable to be immortal in terms of the increased means, but also in terms of the obligation to society, in terms of the change that you would be able to effectuate. Now, I'd like to get on to some refutation of that which side proposition brought up. They talked about, this was very interesting, the Prometheus conundrum. Now, certainly there is a philosophical issue to immortality. Now, what we see is that when the universe goes to heat entropy, and you're just floating around there forever, it doesn't really seem plausible. So what we think is the most reasonable interpretation of immortality is you're going to live, you're going to be able to live as long as the universe still exists, for example. At that point, I mean, you know, given that the universe, given that significant change has occurred, given that situations, if maybe no more life is present, then maybe you can have the option of terminating your life. We think that this is probably the most reasonable interpretation of the situation. Yet even if this were the case, but we don't even think that this is the case because of the aspect of infinite opportunities. We see the universe as the manifestation of certain logical necessities, manifestly that something needs to exist. And as long as something needs to exist, complicated situations are going to arise, and you are going to be able to deal with these situations in order to best represent the living creatures, the conscious living organisms which exist in the universe, whether in this universe, in a multiverse, in another galaxy. You are always going to be able to effectuate this positive change. So in terms of the lost loved ones and the finite aspect of life, what we see is that what makes current lives beautiful, what makes our lives beautiful, might be the finite aspect of it. But what makes an infinite life beautiful is something completely different. It is the infinite opportunities that come with this. It is the infinite opportunities to effectuate a positive change in the universe. It is the infinite opportunities not only to better yourself, to better your pursuit of knowledge, in order to be able to be considered as a scientific community, but also contribute morally to society in the ways that you see best fit. So it is ultimately for these reasons. The fact that we see the universe as something which is infinite. We see that human potential as something which is infinite, and we see that this striving for immortality to be just an extension of human curiosity, of innate humans striving to reach beyond their limits, and it is for this reason, ultimately, that we are proud to oppose the resolution, proud to become immortal. If we were to have the chance, we would definitely say that.